May 11th, 1979. A residential street in Brooklyn. Late afternoon. Chris Rosenberg pulls his car to the curb. He's 28 years old, driving a Chevrolet, wearing a gold chain. The engine idles for a moment before he cuts it. He's here for a meeting. Nothing unusual. Roy DeMeo, his mentor, his protector, the man who gave him status in the mob world, wants to see him. Rosenberg steps out. The spring air smells like cut grass and exhaust. He's nervous but tries not to show it. Things have been tense lately. The Colombians are angry. The family is asking questions. Inside a nearby location, men are waiting. Men he knows. Men he's worked with for years. Men who've been ordered to kill him. He walks toward them, trying to appear confident. Within the hour, he'll be dead. Shot in the face, his body left in a vehicle in Flatlands, Brooklyn. This is the story of how a Jewish kid from Far Rockaway became a successful cocaine dealer under the protection of the Gambino crime family's most violent crew. How his impulsiveness and lies created a crisis that threatened the family, and how that crisis signed his death warrant. Because in the Mafia, protection lasts only until you become more trouble than you're worth. And Chris Rosenberg's problem wasn't that he failed, it was that he created a situation the family couldn't tolerate. March 9th, 1951. Far Rockaway, Queens. A working-class neighborhood where Jewish, Italian, and Irish families live in close quarters. Their kids growing up on the same streets, learning the same lessons about loyalty, territory, and respect. Harvey Christian Rosenberg, he'll become Chris later, is born into this world. His family isn't wealthy. His father works. His mother keeps house. Nothing about his early childhood suggests the trajectory that's coming. Far Rockaway isn't a major mafia neighborhood, but it has criminal elements. Street-level bookmakers, small-time hustlers, young toughs who graduate from petty theft to more serious crimes. Young Rosenberg watches, learns, and becomes obsessed with mob culture. By his early teens, he's already operating on the margins. Small-time bookmaking, moving marijuana in quantities too small to attract serious attention, running errands for older criminals. But Rosenberg has a quality that will define his entire criminal career: a desperate need for acceptance from Italian mobsters. He's charismatic, but insecure. He's smart, but impulsive. He wants status, respect, recognition, the kind that comes from being connected to the Mafia. And he has a problem that will define his entire criminal career and ultimately contribute to his death. He's Jewish. In the traditional Mafia structure, this is an absolute ceiling. You can work with the Mafia, earn for the Mafia, kill for the Mafia. But you can never be made, formally inducted as a member with the protections and privileges that status confers. Rosenberg doesn't accept this limitation gracefully. He's constantly trying to prove himself, to demonstrate he's as tough, as loyal, as valuable as any Italian wise guy. This need for validation will make him reckless. Late 1960s. Rosenberg, now in his late teens, is operating more seriously. He's built a small network of associates dealing marijuana and other drugs. The profits are modest, but steady. More importantly, he's building relationships with Italian criminals in Brooklyn and Queens. He hangs around social clubs. He is respectful, never crosses obvious lines, never disrespects made men, understands the hierarchy. And he meets Roy DeMeo. DeMeo is a rising figure in the Gambino crime family. Born in 1940, he's about 11 years older than Rosenberg and already deeply embedded in Mafia operations. He's a loan shark, a bookmaker, and increasingly, a killer. By the early 1970s, DeMeo will be running one of the most murderous crews in Mafia history, operating out of the Gemini Lounge in Brooklyn. When he meets Rosenberg, he sees potential. Not brilliance, but utility. The kid is eager, willing to take risks, and isn't Italian, which means he can work in areas where made members can't easily operate. DeMeo brings him into the crew. Not formally, Rosenberg can't be formally inducted, but as an associate and earner, someone who works for and with made members. The relationship becomes important to Rosenberg. DeMeo represents everything he wants: power, respect, fear. Rosenberg becomes almost pathologically loyal to DeMeo, desperate to maintain his approval. By the early 1970s, Rosenberg is fully operational within the DeMeo crew structure. He's moved beyond small-time marijuana dealing. He's handling cocaine, which is just beginning its transformation from exotic luxury drug to mass-market commodity. And he's making money. Not extraordinary amounts by Gambino family standards, but enough to live well and feel important. 1973 to 1975, the American drug market is transforming. Cocaine, previously the province of wealthy elites and entertainment industry figures, is spreading. The supply chains from South America, particularly Colombia, are becoming more organized, more efficient, more productive. The drug is cheaper and more available than ever before. Simultaneously, American culture is creating demand. Disco culture, nightclub culture. The post-Vietnam, pre-AIDS era when recreational drug use is increasingly normalized in urban environments. New York City is ground zero. Manhattan's nightlife runs on cocaine. The drug spreads to Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx. Demand is strong and growing. Chris Rosenberg sees the opportunity. The traditional mob attitude toward drugs is complicated and contradictory. Officially, the Mafia Commission, the governing body of the five families, prohibits drug dealing. The reasoning is pragmatic. Drug convictions carry severe federal sentences, and addicts make unreliable, talkative witnesses under pressure. But the prohibition is honored more in theory than practice. The profits are substantial. By the mid-1970s, many families have members dealing drugs, usually through non-Italian associates who provide a layer of insulation. Rosenberg becomes that layer for the DeMeo crew. He starts building a network, not a massive empire spanning multiple boroughs, more a clique of young dealers, some connections to Colombian suppliers, mid-level distribution. He acquires cocaine in kilogram quantities, breaks them down, and distributes to secondary dealers who handle street-level sales. His advantages are specific. First, he's not Italian, which means he can work with drug suppliers who won't deal with traditional mafia figures. Colombian sources, Cuban dealers. He bridges communities that the Italians can't easily access. Second, he's protected by DeMeo's reputation. Everyone knows Rosenberg is DeMeo's guy. That provides security. No one robs him, no one cheats him, because doing so means dealing with one of the Gambino family's most feared enforcers. Third, he's willing to take risks that more cautious operators avoid. This isn't always an advantage. His impulsiveness will eventually create problems, but initially it helps him move product and build connections. By 1976 to 1977, Rosenberg is moving cocaine steadily. His operation is profitable, generating thousands of dollars monthly, not the astronomical sums of major wholesalers, but enough to make him valuable to DeMeo and enough to fund a lifestyle that looks successful. The money flows upward. Rosenberg kicks up to DeMeo. DeMeo kicks up to his capo, Nino Gaggi. Gaggi ensures the Gambino administration gets its share. 1977 to 1978. Rosenberg is living well. New house, nice cars, jewelry, gold chains, watches, rings, designer clothes. He's a regular at clubs known by doormen and bartenders, always picking up tabs, always trying to project success and power. He's also a regular at the Gemini Lounge. The Gemini, located on Flatlands Avenue in Brooklyn, is the DeMeo crew's headquarters. It's a bar and social club, but it's most infamous as a murder site. The crew kills victims there, often dismembers bodies in a rear apartment, and disposes of the remains. Over the years, dozens of people will die there. Rosenberg isn't primarily a killer. His value is in drug distribution, not enforcement. But he's present at the Gemini constantly, socializing with DeMeo and other crew members, desperately seeking acceptance and status. And this is where his personality becomes a liability. Rosenberg is flashy, loud. He brags about his money, his connections, his importance. He's emotionally volatile, quick to take offense, eager to prove himself tough. He's also insecure, constantly aware that he's not Italian, that he can never be made, that his status depends entirely on DeMeo's protection. This insecurity manifests as overcompensation. He tries too hard, talks too much, takes unnecessary risks to demonstrate his value. Other associates resent him. They resent that DeMeo protects him. They resent his flashiness. They resent that a Jewish kid is operating at their level. DeMeo warns him repeatedly, "Keep your mouth shut, stop flashing, be more careful." Rosenberg can't help himself. The bragging continues, the flashiness increases, and the mistakes multiply. Late 1978 or early 1979. The exact date is uncertain, but the incident that will kill Chris Rosenberg occurs at a gas station. Rosenberg is there with associates. Two Colombian drug dealers, men he's been doing business with, are also present. What happens next is disputed in the details but clear in its consequences. Rosenberg murders both Colombians. The motive is unclear. Some accounts suggest a dispute over money or drugs. Others suggest Rosenberg felt disrespected. What's documented is that both Colombians end up dead, and Rosenberg is responsible. This creates an immediate problem. The Colombians aren't just random street dealers. They're connected to larger Colombian drug trafficking networks, the same networks that supply much of New York's cocaine market. Rosenberg needs to explain the murders to DeMeo and the Gambino hierarchy. He needs a justification that makes the killing seem necessary rather than reckless. So he lies. According to testimony that emerges later, Rosenberg claims the Colombians insulted him with racial slurs. In his telling, the murders were about defending his honor, about not allowing disrespect. DeMeo and the Gambino leadership initially accept this explanation. Rosenberg is their associate. If he was racially insulted and responded with violence, that's understandable within the Mafia's code. They back him. But the Colombians investigate, they talk to witnesses, they piece together what actually happened. And they discover that Rosenberg lied. The murders weren't about racial insults, they were about something else. Money, drugs, ego, whatever. The racial element was fabricated to justify the killings to the Gambino family. The Colombians are furious they've lost two of their people, and now they discover that the explanation given by the Gambino protected associate was a lie. They demand justice. They make it clear to the Gambino family, either Rosenberg dies or there will be retaliation. And retaliation from Colombian drug cartels in the late 1970s is not an empty threat. These are organizations with substantial resources, violent capabilities, and willingness to escalate conflicts. The crisis lands on Paul Castellano's desk. Castellano is the Gambino family boss, having succeeded Carlo Gambino in 1976. He's a businessman gangster, more interested in profits from construction, unions, and legitimate enterprises than in street-level operations. He particularly hates drugs, not for moral reasons, but because drug operations attract federal attention that threatens his more lucrative rackets. The Colombians present him with an impossible situation. If he protects Rosenberg, he risks a war with major drug suppliers. If he gives up Rosenberg, he undermines the principle that the family protects its associates. But Rosenberg isn't a made member. He's an associate. And he lied. Lied to his own crew, lied to the family hierarchy, and created a situation that threatens everyone. The calculation is straightforward. Chris Rosenberg isn't worth a conflict with the Colombians. Castellano orders Nino Gaggi to handle it. Gaggi orders Roy DeMeo to handle it. Kill Chris Rosenberg. For DeMeo, this is devastating in a way that most hits aren't. DeMeo is a psychopath who's killed dozens of people without apparent remorse. But Rosenberg is different. Rosenberg has been loyal, useful, almost like a surrogate son. DeMeo genuinely cares about him, to the extent DeMeo is capable of caring about anyone. But the order is absolute. Refusing means insubordination, which carries its own death sentence. DeMeo has no choice. He begins planning. Spring 1979. DeMeo sets up the hit. The crew members most likely involved, based on later testimony and investigative accounts, are Joseph Testa and Anthony Center, known as the Gemini Twins. They're DeMeo's most trusted killers, involved in numerous murders, and completely loyal to DeMeo's orders. The method doesn't follow the usual Gemini pattern. Rosenberg won't be dismembered. His body won't disappear. This hit is different, perhaps because DeMeo wants it clean, quick, without the prolonged process of body disposal. Rosenberg needs to be lured to a location where the crew can kill him without witnesses or complications. By early May, the plan is set. May 11th, 1979. The exact sequence of events isn't fully documented, but the outcome is certain. Rosenberg is contacted, told to meet. He knows something is wrong. The tension has been building for weeks. He's aware the Colombians are angry. He's aware the family is unhappy with him. But he comes anyway. Perhaps he believes DeMeo will protect him. Perhaps he has no choice. Perhaps he's in denial about how serious the situation is. He's lured to a location in Brooklyn. Some accounts suggest he's told it's a meeting about business. Others suggest it's more ambiguous. He arrives in his Chevrolet, steps out. The men waiting for him, likely Testa and Center, possibly others, approach. The conversation is brief. Then the violence. Rosenberg is shot multiple times, including in the face. The facial shooting is deliberate. It obscures identity, makes immediate recognition difficult. His body is left in a vehicle in the Flatland section of Brooklyn. Not hidden, not dismembered, just left. This is unusual for the DeMeo crew. Typically, they eliminate all trace of their victims. But Rosenberg's murder serves a different purpose. It needs to be found. The Colombians need to know he's dead. The message needs to be clear. Chris Rosenberg, 28 years old, cocaine dealer, protected associate of Roy DeMeo, is dead. His body is discovered within hours. The NYPD opens a homicide investigation. But Rosenberg was involved in organized crime, which means the investigation faces obstacles. Witnesses don't talk. Evidence is limited. No arrest is ever made specifically for his murder, though crew members later implicate themselves and each other in various testimonies. Rosenberg's death doesn't end the DeMeo crew's problems. It accelerates them. The murder creates additional law enforcement attention. The NYPD's homicide investigation leads detectives to the DeMeo crew. The FBI, already interested in DeMeo for other reasons, increases its focus. Inside the crew, paranoia intensifies. Trust, already fragile, erodes further. Members begin suspecting each other, wondering who might be next, who might be cooperating with law enforcement. The violence that was always present, the murders, the disposals, the enforcement, accelerates. DeMeo and his crew kill more frequently, often for increasingly trivial reasons. Someone is suspected of skimming. Someone is talking too much. Someone looks at someone wrong. The Gemini Lounge continues operating as headquarters and murder site through the early 1980s. 1981 to 1982. The federal investigation broadens. Prosecutors are building a comprehensive case against the DeMeo crew using the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations RICO Act, passed in 1970, but only beginning to be effectively deployed against organized crime in the early 1980s. RICO allows prosecutors to charge individuals with racketeering based on a pattern of criminal activity. For the DeMeo crew, this is devastating. The FBI has evidence of multiple murders, loan sharking, auto theft rings, and other crimes. Simultaneously, crew members begin cooperating. Lower-level associates are arrested on various charges and, facing long sentences, provide information. They talk about the crew's structure, its operations, its members. The most devastating witness is Dominic Montilio, a DeMeo crew associate who's also the nephew of Gambino capo Anthony Gaggi. Montilio participated in or witnessed multiple murders. When he faces charges in the early 1980s, he makes a decision that would have been almost unthinkable a generation earlier. He cooperates completely. Montilio provides detailed testimony about the crew's operations, including descriptions of specific murders, the method of dismemberment and disposal, the crew's structure, and the involvement of specific members. His testimony will eventually help convict multiple crew members and contribute to the destruction of the entire DeMeo operation. January 10th, 1983. A car is found in the parking lot of a Brooklyn motel. Inside, slumped in the front seat with multiple gunshot wounds, is Roy DeMeo. Dead. The murder is never officially solved, but the most credible explanation is that the Gambino family hierarchy, specifically Paul Castellano and Nino Gaggi, ordered his execution. DeMeo had become a liability. The heat on his crew was unsustainable. His murders were attracting too much attention, and there was concern he might cooperate with authorities to save himself. DeMeo's death mirrors Rosenberg's in certain ways. Both men were killed by the organization they served. Both were eliminated because they created problems the family couldn't tolerate. With DeMeo dead, the crew collapses completely. Members are arrested, prosecuted, and convicted. Some cooperate and enter witness protection. Others go to prison for decades. The Gemini Lounge eventually closes. The building still stands as of the 2020s, repurposed as a church. A strange postscript to its history as one of New York's most infamous murder sites. The destruction of the DeMeo crew is part of a larger pattern that devastates the Gambino family throughout the 1980s. In December 1985, Gambino boss Paul Castellano is assassinated outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan, murdered on orders from John Gotti, who seizes control of the family. Gotti's reign is brief and destructive. His ego and visibility attract intense federal attention. In 1992, Gotti is convicted on multiple charges, including murder and racketeering, largely due to testimony from his underboss Salvatore "Sammy the Bull" Gravano, who cooperates with authorities in exchange for a reduced sentence. The era of omertà, the code of silence that supposedly bound Mafia members, is over. Cooperation becomes common. Witness protection becomes routine. The Mafia, while still existing, is fundamentally weakened. Today, Chris Rosenberg is largely forgotten outside of true crime circles. His name doesn't appear in mainstream discussions of organized crime. No movies have been made specifically about him. He's a footnote in the larger story of the Gambino family and the DeMeo crew. But his story reveals fundamental truths about organized crime in the late 20th century. First, Loyalty in the Mafia is transactional and conditional. The organization's rhetoric emphasizes omertà, family, respect. But in practice, loyalty lasts exactly as long as you're useful and not problematic. Rosenberg was useful. He generated income through drug distribution. But the moment he created a crisis that threatened the family's relationship with Colombian suppliers, he was eliminated without hesitation. His relationship with DeMeo, which seemed protective and almost paternal, meant nothing when the family hierarchy decided he had to die. Second, being a Mafia associate as opposed to a made member provided minimal protection. Made members, at least in theory, couldn't be killed without formal approval from the family boss or the commission. Associates could be eliminated on crew level or capo level decisions. Rosenberg's ethnicity made him ineligible for made membership, which meant he was permanently vulnerable, regardless of how useful he was or how close his relationships were. Third, impulsiveness and dishonesty are fatal in organized crime. Rosenberg's murders of the two Colombians might have been survivable if he'd been honest about the motive. Instead, he lied, claiming racial insults as justification. When the Colombians discovered the lie, they demanded retribution. Rosenberg's dishonesty to his own family created the crisis that killed him. Fourth, the drug era brought wealth and destruction to the Mafia. Rosenberg's cocaine operation generated substantial income for the DeMeo crew and the Gambino family. But drug operations also attracted attention, created conflicts with violent drug cartels, and contributed to the eventual federal prosecutions that devastated the family. The Mafia's involvement in drugs brought short-term profits and long-term destruction. So who was Chris Rosenberg? A victim? In one sense, yes. He was murdered by people who'd used him and then discarded him when he became inconvenient. A criminal? Absolutely. He dealt drugs, participated in violence, and contributed to organized crime operations that damaged communities and lives. An ambitious kid who wanted status? Definitely. His entire criminal career was driven by a desperate need for acceptance from Italian mobsters, for recognition and respect that his ethnicity prevented him from ever fully achieving. A cautionary tale, most clearly. His story demonstrates that in organized crime, usefulness provides only temporary protection. The moment you create problems through recklessness, dishonesty, or bad judgment, you become expendable. He was 28 when he died. His body was found shot in the face, left in a vehicle in Brooklyn. His murder was never officially solved. The investigation produced no arrests. The men who killed him, likely Joseph Testa and Anthony Center, either died themselves, went to prison for other crimes, or continued operating until the crew's eventual collapse. The cocaine he distributed is long gone. The money he generated has been spent or seized. The operation he helped build was dismantled. All that remains is the story. A Jewish kid from Far Rockaway who wanted desperately to be a mobster, who found protection under Roy DeMeo, who made money dealing cocaine, who murdered two Colombians and lied about it, and who learned the hardest lesson organized crime teaches. May 11, 1979. A vehicle sits in Flatlands, Brooklyn. Inside, a body. Face shot multiple times. Gold chain still around the neck. Chris Rosenberg won't be dismembered, won't be disappeared. His body will be found, identified, investigated. The Colombians will learn he's dead. The crisis will be resolved. The Gambino family will move on. Roy DeMeo will continue killing for nearly 4 more years before the family eliminates him too. The crew will continue operating until federal prosecutions and internal murders destroy it completely. The Gemini Lounge will continue as a murder site until finally closing. But for Chris Rosenberg, it's over. The status he craved couldn't save him. The protection he relied on disappeared the moment he became a liability. The organization he served killed him, because his lies created a problem they couldn't tolerate. In the Mafia, loyalty lasts only as long as you're not a problem. And for Chris Rosenberg, lying about why he killed 2 Colombians became a problem the family solved the only way they knew how. He made money for the mob. He created a crisis with their suppliers. Then they killed him.